And hello again, dear ones. Rev BRZ with you here.
Rev Z right here.
And if you're watching this live, well, you're one of the lucky ones because just as we were watching those intros, Facebook blew up. And I don't know if we're being seen anywhere
Yeah, I
uh,
see.
other than maybe a couple of places on Facebook today. So, and therefore, if you're listening, hey, give us a shout out. Let us know if you've got us out there. Otherwise, we're going to roll right ahead because this will live in the archives, and this is part of what we're here today.
Yeah,
And we know
it'll
we've
be
got
on YouTube.
it'll be on YouTube, and people will be watching this at another time down the road. We know
Hey,
that as
somebody
well.
just jumped in. Maribeth.
Mar- Maribeth, nice to see you, Maribeth. Thanks for joining us. So, folks, this is New Thought Today, a weekly program where Rev Z and I get a chance to sit down and look at how applicable the New Thought philosophy is to today's life. And we've been doing that over the last few months by kind of looking at the founding documents, the founding principles, founding statements of this philosophy, and using those as our jumping off point week by week. So today, if you're just catching up with the conversation, today is part 5 of our look at a collection of statements that Dr. Ernest Holmes wrote early on in religious science called What We Believe, or more commonly known as What We Believe. And so I want to real quick kind of just briefly jump back to last week and remind folks last week what we were talking about is that we believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul forever and ever expanding. And everything from that point, we kind of agreed, everything from that point really is a deeper clarification of that. So we believe that heaven is within us. And I'm on the wrong slide. You're right. There we are. We believe that there's where we were last week. We believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we're surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the direct impress of our thoughts and act upon it. Using that principle alone, we believe in the healing of the sick through the power of this mind, in the control of conditions through the power of this mind. And today, what we're looking at is we believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life to all, as well as we believe in our own soul, our own spirit, and our own destiny. For we understand that the life of each of us is God. So, Z, over this exploration of the last few weeks, we have found some similarities in Holmes's writing. We found some places where it feels like it's nothing. It's not necessarily a new statement, but a clarification of another statement. Um, as we start to wrap this up here today, what are your opening thoughts? What do you want people to know about these statements?
Well, I think, as you said, that there's this reoccurring theme and this wrapping itself around itself, if you will, because we're basically talking about one thing. We're talking about God, the living spirit that is in, through, and around all things, and that it is the essence of everything. And that when you have something that's so inclusive and so profound, at some point you will begin to repeat yourself because there's so many different nuances, but to sink it in or anchor it, you come back to that touchstone that the living spirit that is known as God, the thing itself in many different names, expresses through all things, and it comes out at some point, it converges back to the one.
Yes, yes. We are all made of this God stuff, and no matter how you look at it, we've got to remember that at the very basis of it all, that it's all the oneness. We're all in this. We're all part of. It's not even that we're in this together, right? Because even the together implies that there could be something such as a part.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of what I've always loved about Holmes is no matter how deep he gets, no matter where he goes, some way in all of his writings, he finds his way to bring us back to that,
Yeah.
to that one simple fact that if that it's all God.
Yep.
Period. Nothing.
And that's sometimes you would think is the simple thing, but it's sometimes the hardest thing to get our head around, because as we experience the external world, or the physical world, if you will, manifested world, there is clearly a visual separation, but we know through the blessings and grace of quantum physics that there is no separation, that energetically everything is connected for sure through the waves and of light particles. And then it's just, how much of a charge those light particles have gives you a more or more comfortable connection point in terms of realizing it.
Right. Yes. And therein, so I want to recap on our big statement for today, right? The eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life. Goodness, kindness, givingness of life. Say that with us. Goodness, kindness, and when we remember that is our very nature.
Mm-hmm.
That is the vibration, the energetic that's pulsating, that's vibrating as every quark, every cell, every atom of our beingness. Now, because we're human, we can choose to turn away from those truths, and we can choose to look at life through a different lens.
Yeah.
Life is happening to me. We've been talking about that a lot in other programs lately, right? We can look at life through a different lens, as if there is something other than eternal loving kindness, goodness, the eternal givingness of life. Right. Goodness, loving kindness.
And I think a good way of visualizing that is your light switch or your computer switch, or anything that is connected electronically or electrically to a outlet. My computer is always on. The electricity is always flowing through it. It depends on me whether I want to push the button to start receiving and transmitting or not. The same thing with my light switch. The electricity is always going through the circuitry of my lights, but it depends on me to whether I cut them on or off. And so that givingness and that lovingness of God is always there, but we have to flip the switch. We have to make the conscious decision to say, yes, I will allow myself to be a conduit for the divine. And when I open that gate, the love, the kindness, and the givingness is more apparent. Not that it's not there previously, because it's always there. It is eternal, but I have to tap into it. I can have a glass of water in front of me and saying there's no water, but if I don't, it's right there. I got to drink it. So it's an interesting thing.
Yeah. It's the water's right there, and I'm thirsty. Why haven't you drank the water? I'm too thirsty to drink the water. And we live in this paradox. We live in this place where we have this chance to say, okay, whichever way I'm going to go, that's what I'm going to receive. So whatever I'm putting out there, that's what I'm going to receive back. I think it's a lot easier to put kindness and love and compassion and graciousness and that sense of givingness. And as you were talking, I'm reminded of the story of the wood stove. A wood stove is another great example. A wood stove is sitting there. It has everything it needs to give you all the heat you need to keep your house warm, to keep you warm, keep your family warm. The only trick is you got to feed the stove the wood. And how many of us have ever walked up to a stove and said, man, I wish that thing were lit. I wish I could get some heat out. Come on, stove, give me some heat. Give me some heat, then I'll give you the wood. We got to chop the wood. We got to carry the wood. We got to do the work in advance to experience that warm feeling. Now, it doesn't have to take years and years and years of doing the work to experience the benefit.
Right.
It's fairly, as soon as I give that stove some wood, it's going to light up. Assuming we know what we're doing, you're going to get some heat out of that thing pretty instantaneously.
And that just reminds me of the whole process, principle and law combination, right? there's the principle of things, and then there's the law of how you extract out of those principles. And since we already used electricity, we'll stick with that one to have some consistency, right? There's a principle of electricity, right? And from that principle, certain laws have been deduced so that I can get the electricity through hydro, through solar, through turbine, through fossil fuel or gas, or so there are many different ways to extract the principle of electricity out of that. And there are certain laws that have to be put in place to use these different methods, but it is a law. I can't use the law to get turbine electricity or wind or solar that I'm using to get coal or gas, or so
Right.
we have to, and all that to say, we have to be clear about what we're trying to do and follow the law and the precepts to that to make it work. Now, if I'm trying to get, I got a big wind turbine on my car and we ain't going nowhere, we can't pick up speed. Well, that's probably the wrong law to implement on that car.
Right. I remember having a conversation with an engineer that does wind turbines once. You might have been there, about why can't we just hook a turbine where the grill is, and let the wind do it? And what he basically said was there's not enough energy to get you going fast enough for that turbine to create enough power to keep the whole system moving.
Yep.
But people have thought about it, and that's, I believe, part of what we're talking about here as well, right? There is this potentiality in the universe for us to have, do, be, create anything we want. It's not tricky once you know it, but it feels that way until you really do. The part of it is coming into this place where we are constantly the vessel or the avenue through which God or the oneness or the eternal life or the eternal, through which this principle demonstrates and reveals itself.
Yeah.
And when we're really being this, I do what I do not to get more money in my bank account, but to serve the evolution of human consciousness. I do what I do to bring this philosophy into the world, not to amass a certain number of cars or enough square footage. When we bring ourselves into that place of pure giving, pure goodness, pure kindness, pure compassion and love, then we are closely aligned with the indwelling presence. This is things we've been talking about for the last several weeks, right, folks? You've heard these terms before. In the end of these statements here, Holmes is really wrapping this up to say, man, if you haven't got it yet, let me be clear. We are all God. We are all one. End of story.
Yeah. And I think, when we look at this whole idea of givingness by God, then we really want to tap into how do I become a receiver of that giving, right? And I would submit that it's by alignment, and by that I mean, I'll take it through the 4 stages of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. We have to take care of the body temple. We have to, at the physical level, at the mental level, we have to be conscious of our thoughts and words and ideas that we are using to craft things or visualize things or express to others. Then emotionally, the condition of our body temple and the actual words and ideas and visions that we use at the mental level will affect emotions of how we feel.
Yeah.
And then once we can put that in alignment, the spiritual part is just a really outgrowth of that. I mean, once we get those 3 in line, the other one just falls in. It becomes a spiritual way of life.
Amen. Absolutely. Yes. Here, folks, is what we're looking for, right? That it is this, it's not something we turn on. on Sunday mornings or Wednesday evenings. It's not something we turn on for a half an hour in the morning with our spiritual practice. It's not something we turn on when we see somebody panhandling at the end of a highway on ramp or off ramp or on the street corner. It's not something we turn on when, oh, I'm having a conversation with my minister or something like that. It's something that is just, it becomes we become who that is.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
become the allness of the oneness, and we can't help ourselves. I don't know. At least I can. I see things and it's like, oh, I can see how this is gonna, right?
Well, I think I mean, that's the magic of it, right? I'm trying to think of that verse. There's a verse in the Bible that speaks to, all these things being done for Jesus. And you say, well, when did it happen? Well, it happens all the time. You don't need to be concerned with that part, because that is the way it works. The thing itself is going to be the thing itself regardless. And so once you put yourself in right alignment with that thing, then you just get blended in, for lack of a better word, or you get amalgamized by the thing itself. And then it goes. It's analogous to white water rafting. If you ever been white water rafting, once you find yourself in the stream part, it takes you. You don't need to do much. You just make a little adjustment, and you just take the rapid and you go down the river. Now, if you start leaning too much to one side or the other, or forward and backwards, that's going to take you out the flow. And if you ever been white water rafting in cold water and get flipped over, it ain't pretty.
It ain't fun either. So we're here, we're in the balance, we're in the flow, right, folks? It's there's an equilibrium that happens. It's a give and it's a take. Today I'm a little more here, today I'm a little more there. To stay with your whitewater rafting analogy, some days I'm feeling right there and let's go, and other days I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, this is a little too much for me. And there's going to be days in our lives that feel like that. There's going to be days where half an hour into your morning, an hour into your morning, 2 hours into your morning, life feels like, whoa, this is a little too much for me. That's okay.
Yeah.
Those are the times when it's the most important to say, whoa, wait a minute. Whatever it is that I'm afraid of right now, whatever it is that's pushing, whatever it is that's causing me concern, well, that's not necessarily the truth of God's life.
Mm-hmm.
Of how I get to live God's life, because, well, I have options.
And the whole idea, and this is homework for everybody, continuous homework, myself included, to really get our heads around the whole rightness and wrongness of things. Now, by all means, I am not trying to create chaos, because there are parameters, or there are boundaries in which we have to operate. But in terms of right and wrong can be relative. It may be right for someone without diabetes to eat a big old slice of sweet potato pie. Somebody with diabetes, it's not right for them to eat a big old sweet potato pie. And so if you can keep it in that kind of a context, and sense that there is as you were saying before, Robert, there's this variance, there's this polarity, and you're trying to find your rhythm within that polarity to come up with a set vibration, right? So if we look at sound or music on a scope, we see it have its waves, but it's set. Once it gets established, it's a set. And if I move it from one scope to another scope to another, the wave pattern will be the same. And it's the same when we connect with God. That once we establish that and we get our pattern of communication with God, or how to manifest through God, or how to overcome issues, the rightness and wrongness of it is not even existent. It is being in alignment or not. And when I am in alignment, the givingness, the allness, all of that stuff just happens.
Right. That is the embrace of seeming opposites.
Yes.
Right. To be able to look at it and say, this group sees it from this side, this group sees it from this side. We've got to be able to say, but there is a validity in all experience. Every perspective is valid. Every experience is valid because it's all part of the oneness. And it's part of the process of coming to a greater realization of that oneness.
Yeah.
Of saying, yes, not only am I aligned, but we're taking that alignment and we're demonstrating it so that others may see they have that ability to be aligned, so that others can tap into that and say, well, wait a minute, if he can do it, why can't I do it? And that's the absolute truth. If I can do it, anybody can do it. We all have this ability, this power to be a revealer of truth as we live in an indwelling close contact with the divine. I feel like I'm starting to sound like a record here today.
That's what happens when you talk about one thing. I mean, pretty soon you're going to come around the 360-degree turn and you're going to be back at point zero. And you can say, oh, look where I am. I'm right back where I started from. But ideally, you're a little degree higher. Yes. Even if it's 0.001 higher, which gives you a different vantage point, which gives you a different vibration, which gives you a different understanding. It's like the poem. You know, I forget who it was. I went out and I came back and I found myself at the starting point. I don't know who. I have to remember who that poem was by. Maybe it was The Road Less Traveled by a guy.
Stumped me on that one.
Yeah, I'm going to think of it. If anybody on the audience knows who that is and they can pick up my babble,
please do let us know.
Hit me up.
Well, you know, I think that means it's the perfect place to take a quick moment, let some of our sponsors say hello and join in the fun here. You're watching New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. We're going to be right back. Give us 1 minute to say hello to our sponsors. We'll be right back. And we're back. This is New Thought Today. I'm Rev BRZ.
I'm Rev Z.
And we've been chatting about Ernest Holmes' seminal statements, what we believe today. We're looking, wrapping up this 5-week series with looking at the final 2 statements. We believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life to all. We believe in our own soul, our own spirit, and our own destiny, for we understand that the life of each of us is God. Z, let's talk about that soul, spirit, and destiny for just a moment. This, in some ways, this is, it feels in some ways a little out of place. Like, and didn't we say this earlier? And obviously he ends, and I think the first half of the sentence is there because he wants us to be reminded to understand the life of each of us is God, right? That ending statement really makes the impact. But it's always been this trio of soul, spirit, and destiny. that's intrigued me. What's your take on this one?
Well, the first part, I would kind of put the order around so that it flows kind of nicely. So spirit is all there is. Spirit is the name of God, all there is. It is the essence, the animating, the essence of all life and all things. And when we take it up to our level, the human level or humanity level, it is the spirit that animates the soul. And that soul is that aspect of the thing itself of God that is incarnated within us. As it says in most traditions, or a lot of traditions anyway, that God created us from himself. So God either breathed the breath or created us out of clay and put his spirit in us and so forth. So our soul is that direct connection portal, if you will, to the spirit of God, God itself. And then the destiny. Now that's a tricky one because people have all kind of different definitions of what destiny is. And one of them is, well, it gets into the whole thing about predestination. And so then we get into this whole conversation about, well, if it's predestined for me to be ABC, why do I need to do anything? And a couple different answers to that, but let's put that aside for a minute. So, and if we just look at spirit, soul, and destiny, then the destiny part of it is because I am an emissary of light, of God energy that is imbued in my soul. I am destined to be a creator. I am destined to be a lightway, a light shower. I am a way shower. I am destined to be a healing aspect to someone else. Now, how that gets played out, depends on person, place, and thing and environment.
Right.
The way I lead somebody in the forest is going to be different than in the snow.
Yep. I like the way you explain destiny, and it's a much. I like to look at it very much the same way. We have a destination as human individual, as human, right? The spirit is the all-encompassing. Our individual soul is forever eternal, and in this bodysuit, in this 50, 60, 80, 120 years, whatever we have in this go around, I have a destination.
Yeah.
And that destination is truly the same, I believe, for all of us. And that destination is not just to awaken to all of this, but to live and model and demonstrate and be all of this. I went off on a tangent recently, only to myself, but now I guess you all get in on it. On this idea of being woke, because I go back to sleep every night, pretty much. So I can never claim to truly just be woke. To me, that's predestination. That's, no. I am in a constant process of fulfilling my destination, of fulfilling my destiny to be this model, this expression, this experience. So I am, CSL's got this line about awakening humanity to its spiritual magnificence. Yes. And I think it's our job, all of us collectively, to keep doing that for each other every day, day by day by day, every day.
Yeah. And I think that awakening word may be better served if it's reminding us of our magnificence and that whole process that you were talking about of waking. If we go back and look at, this is a tradition that is foundationally set or sits upon ancient wisdom, right? Yeah. And so if we go back to the ancient wisdom of Egypt, we have the book that they call the Book of the Dead, but the proper term for that is the Book of Coming Forth by Day. And it states that we are always in the process of becoming. And that whole process of Ra rising and going through the underworld and then rising the next day is a symbol of our life, showing us that we are always becoming. Each day we go through this so-called underworld or the unconscious, where we are allowed to gather all of the information we got during the daylight. Let's put the puzzle together. And when I come up the next day, I'm born again. I'm waking up again because now I got some new pieces to the puzzle, and I can approach the world differently.
Yeah. I don't have this as absolute authority. However, I'm pretty sure this story is true, that it is what you're speaking of, this place of becoming, that Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith incorporated into the visioning practice with the question, what am I becoming? Or
Yeah.
what is our growing at, right? And we all say that question a little differently, but really that's what we're speaking to. What is this great becoming? Because that never ends.
Mm-mm.
And I don't even believe it ends when we cast off this bodysuit and head back to the next plane. We, as eternal souls, are constantly in this process of becoming something new. And I forget where this is in Ernest's writings, but at one point I've kind of narrowed it down a little bit, but the way I say it is, there is one self-existent cause,
Mm-hmm.
this thing called God, this life. And that one self-existent cause is forever taking on form and abandoning that form in order to take on new form.
Mm-hmm.
So we are forever letting go of what we think we are, or what we think we're supposed to be doing, and letting go of what we have become, so that we can become something new,
Right.
something more, something lighter, more aligned, or whatever it might be.
Right. Yeah. There's that saying that says, I have to let go what I am to become who I am.
Yeah.
And because what I am or what I think I am is based on a conglomeration of experience and ideas and circumstances and situation. But I know, and we all know, that if I was in another situation, family, city, whatever, I would be slightly different than what I am now in terms of presentation. But there is a core concept of what Rev Z is that is always present. And so I have to continue to let go of these ideas of what I think I am to become who I am, i.e., tap into my God essential stamping that says, here you go.
Yep. And this is tricky. We get it, folks, right? This isn't necessarily easy. And there may be some of you that are watching this that find yourself going, whoa, but wait a minute. I don't love her anymore. I'm not aligned with his view anymore. Has this all been a mistake? And we want you to know that no, it hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Every part of our lives, every experience of our lives brings us to that juncture, that opportunity to step into this place and say, hey, I'm going to make a different decision. I'm going to move in a different direction here. The way I love to remember it is, no matter how far you may have traveled down a wrong road, it's not wrong, and you can go back.
Yeah.
Or you can just take a step to the left and get on this other path over here and go from here with what you've already got.
Yes.
And I think that's generally the best path, is to stop, look, okay, I'm not going back. I'm going to take a side step here. I'm going to get on a different path, and I'm going to move in a different direction.
Yeah. And the key thing that came up for me there is, there's this whole thing with where Jesus is this great parable orator, if you will, and this great storyteller. And the reason for that, or at least part of the reason for that, is because this thing is so vast and there's so many ways to approach it. These parables and metaphors and stories are used, and they begin sometimes to sound repetitive, if you will, but they're there because everybody jumps in at a different point. So if I use a metaphor about cars, let's say, somebody who's a car guy or a car gal will gravitate to that more than a guy or a girl who's a music person, right? I need a music story for them to hook in. And so that's why we have these different stories and ways of explaining these metaphors and colloquialisms and all these things, is so for each person to find their stream. And a great example of that in a metaphor in the Bible is when Moses was leading his people into the wilderness, he struck the rock, and there are 12 springs, and it says each tribe knew which spring to drink the water from, because they knew what they resonated with and they were able to get there, and everybody was satisfied.
Yeah, exactly. And life, it's this place, right? There's a part of me that's like, yeah, how easy would it be if we just had one story? Hey, folks, here it is. This is the way it is. You're on the planet. Here's the manual. It only takes 20 minutes to read. You'll be good. Just and ultimately, that's going to be a really, really boring experience in existence. Um, and I love what you're saying, because I'm not the greatest Bible scholar in the world. I'm pretty poor when it comes to interpreting and really understanding the Bible. And yet, what I know is these stories get repeated, and every one of them tells a different story, of a different version, a different perspective. And that is the richness that is life, that says, yes, we get done with these broadcasts, and one of us might be, well, that was crap. And the other one's, oh, I thought it was the greatest one we've ever done.
Right.
We have these unique ways. And let me be clear, we never do crap. It just, that never actually happens. I just made that up. We get to the end of an experience, and we can have totally different experiences than the person standing next to us. That is the joy of it. That is the uniqueness of it. Because that's also the place where we get to sort of gauge, how am I doing on this loving kindness thing? How am I doing on being non-judgmental? How am I doing on being truly unconditionally loving? How am I doing at recognizing the divine in everyone and everything around me?
Mm-hmm.
It is through that we get to really kind of determine, how am I doing? And I guess that leads to, what do I want to do better?
Right.
Right.
And when you think about it, I mean, this idea just clearly popped into my head. They have all these different drawings where, if you look at it one way, you see, an old lady. If you look at it another way, you see a young lady. And if you're able to expand the vision, you can kind of almost see both of them simultaneously, right? So clearly, we understand the idea that what we perceive as reality is closely linked to our perception, right? What we're perceiving, how much are we able to take in and pull together? And the other part of that is the old adage is both the young woman and the old woman and something else, right?
Right.
And so once we're able to get our head around that and accept that there are many, many versions or many perceptions, that, as it says again in the Bible, Jesus said, in my Father's house there are many mansions. If it was not true, I would have told you, right? And so that same concept that there are many different ways and many different perspectives of how to see God, of how to see, life, knowing that because we're in a finite state attached to the infinite state, we can only view it for long periods of time in that finite. We can get glimpses of the total, right? And those are those epiphany moments, and those out of body experiences and all those kinds of things, but they don't last for us because we are an aspect of the eternal in that respect.
Right. What do you think, folks? How's this expressed for you? That's what we really want to know. Yeah. Because what I know is, in a planet where there's 7.5 billion different people on the planet, or whatever, then that means there's 7.5 billion different ways to approach God. 7.5 billion different ways to experience God. Now, a lot of us, we're aligned. We like this, and think back to the days when we used to all get together in what we call churches. I know it's been over a year since we've been to church. So think back a ways to when we all used to get together in the building. There is, I guarantee you, Z, you've been around ministry long enough. I've been around churches long enough. It doesn't matter what you do, what you say, what song you sing, who does what, who speaks what. There's going to be somebody in the audience that doesn't like it and wants to let you know about it Monday morning. Mm-hmm. And if you listen to all that, it's going to sound like every aspect of Sunday absolutely bombed, failed, and oh my God, that nobody can stand the thing we're doing. Nope. Everybody's going to have their own way of approaching the divine. And some of us don't want to come standing. Some of us want to sit down. Some of us don't want to boogie and shake our booty, and some of us do. Some of us don't want this, and some do. you get, and here's the cool part, you get to make that up for yourself. You get to determine, hey, what works for me and what doesn't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love that not all New Thought churches look and feel and act the same. I love that if I walk into a New Thought church, I have no clue what I'm going to get. But I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get week 52 or week 22 of a 52-week series that everybody in the country is using.
Yes. Yes.
Or not. Maybe we're going there and I don't know it.
we are definitely becoming. I can say that. And you know, thank God we're becoming something different than we were yesterday. Because I know there are things that happened in my life over the week, over this day, that has caused me to look at certain things differently now.
Yeah.
And you know, that happens every day, sometimes 2, 3, 4 times a day. And when those pivotal moments happen, those epiphanies, if you will, then we become a new person, because you know, things that weren't in our preview before, they're not, and we begin to really understand this eternal givingness and lovingness and everything in that vein of God, because he's bringing us along to say, okay, yesterday you didn't have this information and you were totally looking at world one way. Now you got this. I bet you ain't looking at it like that no more.
Right.
You know, let your car get stolen from yesterday to the day. You ain't looking at the world the same as you did yesterday.
Right. Exactly. Hey, folks, if you're just joining us, this is New Thought Today, and we're looking at the final two statements in Ernest Holmes's Declaration of Principles, or also known as What We Believe. Today, we've been talking about we believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life to all, and the fact that we believe in our own soul, our own spirit, and our own destiny, for we understand that the life of each of us is God. And you know what we want you to know is we get it. This has been we've been babbling on about this series of statements for a good 5 hours now, and we'd love if you went back and watched all the back episodes of this. But what we also want to do is, the intention behind this show is to open this up and be able to look at so much what we've been talking about, various perspectives and various ways of interpreting this. Because if what we're saying isn't resonating, well, you're probably not listening to this, but maybe you'll come back and listen to somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to do for the next few weeks. So for the next few weeks, we're going to bring some friends of ours on, very well-respected people that know what they're talking about, have been in this philosophy and studying these statements for many decades, collectively, let's just say collectively many decades.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to out anybody. It's, you know, being a lifer in this philosophy. But over the next few weeks, we are going to bring on some other experts and some other friends to sit and chat with us. And what we'd love to hear from you is, what questions should we be asking these folks? When we look at Ernest Holmes's What We Believe, and again, we've been encompassing this over the last 5 weeks. What questions haven't we answered for you, or that you would like us to dig into? And look at that, our dear friend Michelle Wadley's watching, because she's going to be one of our experts, and she's going to be with us next week in the hot seat, if you will, talking about what we believe and answering our questions, your questions. So send those in. If you want to get those to us directly, you're welcome to send an email to ministertalk@ntmedia.org. Send an email to ministertalk@ntmedia.org. Let us know what questions you have for us or for Reverend Michelle on next week's show. And then next week we'll let you know who's coming the week after that as well. So.
And you know, I just want to echo that, because if we get questions, that gives us the opportunity to go deep, right? To really start dissecting this philosophy, to really start answering or attempting to answer, because some of y'all might stump us. you know, y'all, we know we got brilliant minds on the airways. And so, you know, I'm sure that there are a couple of questions, and a couple of you are going to come with some questions and say, "Oh, I'm going to get back to you next week on that." But that's what we want, right? Well, because this program is designed to figure out how we take this philosophy and implement it in our lives so that we see results, not just theory, not just, you know, yabba yabba yabba. We want to be able to say, I took this, I put it in practice, I had this, that, or the other condition thing, and after being diligent about this practice and really understanding it, this is what manifested. Because now when you speak, you're going to speak from a whole, as my father, you hear me say this all the time, my father always told me, I'm telling you what I know, not what I heard. Meaning, I'm telling you what I've experienced, not what I read in a book or I heard some story about. The story was good, but when I did it myself, I understood.
For me, that's what I always loved about this philosophy from the very beginning. The word science is in there. Science of mind, religious science. Let's be religious scientists. Like, let's be scientific about this thing we call religion or spirituality or metaphysics or whatever we want to call it. Let's be scientific about it. And let's say, hey, when I do this, this is the result I get. When I don't do that, this is the result I get. When I do this and that together, this is the result I get. And I can reach onto it. I got a whole bookshelf of journals back there, folks, over the last almost 20 years of being in this philosophy to say this stuff works in this way. When I do it, when I bring these aspects, when I do it this way for me through it works. Now, therein is a pattern and therein is a template, if you will, a blueprint of how you can use it. But you can't try to say the same words I do. You can't try to do the practice the way I do it. You've got to do it in a way that works for you.
Right. And that's that whole aspect of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual conglomeration or makeup of who we are. As we push each one of those buttons, different things get inspired. And it, you know, again, I'm going to use one of my analogies. You could have a flute and a saxophone playing the same song. They're going to sound entirely different because of the instrument that song is coming out of. And so that's what we're each instruments in the symphony of life. And although we're playing the same song called life, it sounds a little differently. And even if I have several flutes and several saxophones, the intonation, the depth and breadth of my diaphragm and so forth will cause my song to be a little higher, a little lower. It might be right in harmony with yours. And that's how we begin to really engage life collectively as one humanity. And that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. Just you scared me, Z, the image of a flute and a saxophone, right? So I'm sure there's some others out there that just went, "Ooh, no, wait." But, you know, and that's life. And then somebody says, "Oh, no, but wait, listen, give it," right? We make those snap judgments that say, "Oh, no," and then, hold on a minute, wait a minute. There is some beauty here. There is some harmony here. There is some resonance here.
Yes.
How do I get in, you know, and it still may not be what you turn on when you know, it may not be your go-to song. Let's put it that way.
And you know, I just used 2 woodwinds. I didn't bring in any horns or strings into that mix, playing the same song. Now it just expanded even more.
Yes. Now we're talking interfaith. Okay, hold on a minute. Hey, folks, we're having a good time here. This is New Thought Today. We're going to take one more brief moment and let the station take a quick station break, tell you a little bit more about what's going on around here, what's coming up in the near future. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Check it out. Thursdays, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Noon Eastern. A healthy dose of Jersey Girl wisdom. Live with Rev Jersey Girl. Sponsored by New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And we're back. This is New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network, part 5 of our exploration of what is known as the Declaration of Principles, or What We Believe, by Reverend Dr. Ernest Holmes. Z, we've got a few moments here to do some wrap-ups and remind everybody, hey, next week, Reverend Dr. Michelle Wadley's going to be with us, and Rev Jersey Girl, to help kind of go over all of these principles and statements and bring another perspective into the room. And we intend to do that for the next couple of weeks following as well, with other special guests as we're going. So what do we really want people to know before we're done here today, Z?
Ooh, I think the capstone is God is all there is, really. And what we individually and collectively have to do, or I invite you to do, is to engage that, to examine that. And as Robert indicated earlier, let's do it from a scientific perspective. Let's get our lab notebooks and let's start experimenting with God, so that we have a relationship with God, that when I ask or when I talk, I get an answer. Not that I don't. And I'm wondering, did I do it right? Because there's no rightness and wrongness of it. It is about the connection with the divine. And so we figure out what that is individually by using different methods. I use a cell phone. I use a landline. I use an email. I use a post office box and send a regular mail. However that works out for you,
Right.
we have to find out what works for us.
Yeah, absolutely. God is all there is. And anything I see, everything I see, it has to be a part of that oneness. It has to be a demonstration of some creative principle, of some creative force. And that creative force comes from us. We're that factor that takes this everything and brings it down into form, boils it down into form through our thoughts, through our beliefs. So anywhere I look, I have to see the face of God. And if I don't, that is where my work is. The minute I go to, well, that ain't right, or, oh, ain't that or any of those places, that is where my work is. To come back and say, no, wait a minute. This is a divine expression of God too. No matter what hair color they have, no matter who they voted for, no matter what they may believe, that is a divine expression. And therefore, there's something in here for each of us to benefit from, to learn from, to grow from, not to hate on. Right?
Yep. And that's, when we say we are a humanity, inherent in that is a oneness, and inherent in that is a uniqueness that each one of us has to fully own for that term to really have the gravity of what it's meant to be. That we are connected, interrelated, sharing, helping, exempling to each other what works best for the long life, for the extension of life on this plane. That's it. Because as you said, this is an eternal life, right? And we believe that there are aspects of life that are beyond what we see here and what we experience here. And so as we begin to really engage that and understand that, it just sets up a platform to us to enjoy this even more, I think.
Mm-hmm. Amen, amen, amen. I think we're there.
Yes.
Yes. So thank you, folks. Thank you for being with us today. This is New Thought Today. We're here every Tuesday, 2 p.m. on the Mountain Time Zone as part of the New Thought Media Network. And our intention is to look at how did we get to where we are as New Thought, as a philosophy of New Thought, and where do the guiding and founding principles take us into the future. If you want to watch our back episodes, go check them out on YouTube. There's a great playlist, and on Facebook as well. You can find those through the New Thought Media Network page. Regardless of all that, let us know, how is New Thought working for you, and what questions do you have? In the next 3 weeks, we really want to dig in and answer as many questions as we can about this foundation and its transformative philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to have a number of experts with us that we want you to be able to connect with. And if you don't want to send a question in advance, that's okay. Show up next week and ask it in person. Just type it into the chat box, because we're going to continue this exploration of how we can use these principles today to create the life of our dreams, to create the lives we truly desire. I'm Rev BRZ. Until next week, peace and blessings.
Peace and blessing.
Oops, and I forgot to run the movie.